Hello and welcome to the Sandip Roy Show on Express Audio.
The Sandip Roy Show.
For those who are upper caste, the story of caste in India is often about news headlines. Either a caste conflict somewhere, someone lynched for some caste transgression, or it's a debate about reservations and the complicated arithmetic of caste politics in some state going to the polls. In that sense, it's often rather impersonal. It's about numbers and statistics. And the stories that are out there are inevitably about caste atrocities in a village. Dr. Ambedkar had told Dalits to leave the village where caste rules were rigid and come to the city to escape its shackles. But it's rare to find that story in books, especially in English. That's what makes Scum of the Earth, a true story from the margins, unusual. It's a novel, but one that closely tracks its author. Its author, Rakshit Sonawane, is a first-generation learner from a so-called untouchable family that converted to Buddhism. He grew up in a slum in Mumbai where his father was a watchman and his mother a domestic help. Sonawane went on to graduate in English literature and work for media houses like Indian Express, Midday, and the Free Press Journal. And he joins us on the show. Rakshit Sonawane, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
The story of Avinash in your novel has clear parallels with the brief biography of yourself that's at the end, about first-generation learner, factory job, then a government job at the port while getting a degree, and then leaving a secure job to join the media. So why did you want to write a novel about a man named Avinash Gaikwad rather than a memoir about a man named Rakshit Sonawane?
See, writing a memoir or an autobiography, I never thought of writing that because I don't think I have achieved anything great in my life. But still, the kind of experiences I had and the incidents I witnessed, I thought I had an exclusive story which I need to narrate. But while doing it, the thing was it had too many characters and too many distractions, and writing a story which would be readable needed a flow and, a narrative that would be read by many people. That was one thing that compressed my experiences and the incidents I have witnessed, weave a story around those incidents and present it as a novel, as a fictionalized form. And so while doing so, I have made some changes.
Yeah, so I was curious, what's one fundamental difference between you and Avinash?
See, the fundamental difference is that, in the story, Avinash is the only child of his parents. Well, that is not true in my case because I had 3 sisters and a brother. And, writing about them would have created too many characters and distractions, and it would have, hampered the flow of the story. So I thought I'll stick to one character and assimilate some of the experiences and, incidents into a single character so that it becomes simpler to narrate as a story.
Were your siblings upset about it? Did you at least dedicate the book to them or something to make up for writing them out of the script?
Yeah. No, actually, I owe everything to my father and to Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar, because without Baba Saheb's influence on my father, things would not have changed in my life. And my father being a foot soldier of his movement, he brought me up in a different manner. Like he always told me, boss, victimization cannot be your identity in this world. And you don't always crib about somebody having something more than you and all that. And he always kept telling me that it could have been worse. So what you are getting is much better than what your earlier generations have got. So that changed my life,
As a young boy, how did you accept this message from your father? I mean, the Avinash in the book, he's the first generation learner in the family, but he feels attending school was an act of penal service that he had been sentenced to by his parents. And then you have your father saying, like, don't worry if you don't have all this, you could be worse off. Think of Ambedkar. How did you feel?
Like a child, I always expected that if my schoolmates have something, I should also have. And I was not very comfortable with learning the English language, because my mother tongue is Marathi. So it is Devanagari, and there is no difference between spoken and written Marathi. But in English, it is very arbitrary. So, and I had nobody to fall back upon in my slum to help me out. So it became a very difficult thing, like having classmates who are from a different world. The language of your syllabus is alien language. I mean, you can't ask anybody around your house or anybody. So I didn't like school. But it all changed when I visited my village, my ancestral village. And there I came to know about my ancestors. And, my father used to say, you follow Ambedkar and all that. But the real turning point was when I visited the village and I came to know about the real sufferings of my father and the generations before him. And I saw that in that village, that people were segregated on the basis of caste and all that. And then I came to realize that this is the reason my father is always, pushing me and, pestering me that you should anyhow complete your education. So from that point, I developed some kind of, liking for education. And I had some good teachers also, like my drawing teacher. He helped me out. So from that point, it was like accepting some responsibility at a very young age that you have to come out of this situation, and education is the only thing that can help you out. Until then, I used to think that all this misery in my life was because I was poor. But when I learned that it is not just that, it is also because of the caste system, which prevented my ancestors from, having a better life, education and all that.
Was your experience in the village that you talked about similar to what Avinash went through? Because at one level, there is for him the excitement of meeting all these cousins and family and this community. But then he also finds his father, whom he admires, is somewhat estranged from the other people, the relatives in the village, the ones who stayed back, because he had actually followed Dr. Ambedkar's vision to go to the city to escape caste.
See, that is the main reason. My father was, pushed or like sucked into this movement. But his cousins and all were not that interested. But because my father joined this movement, and initially he joined a Jalsa group. A Jalsa group was a kind of a street play group which went around villages to educate people or make them realize that they should move to cities for better education. They should give up all their village duties, those traditional village duties of, running errands for the people there, high caste people, or skinning dead animals, or cremating the dead. So they should give up all these traditional duties and also give up blind faith and all superstitions and move to the cities, because in city there is a better chance of getting education and employment. So that was the reason my father was different from others from his own generation, from the same generation, who stayed back.
How did they regard him? Like his cousins?
Yeah, they regarded him in high esteem. Like when he migrated to Mumbai, he was the first person from my village. I won't say village, from that Maharwada, the settlement of Mahars, who came to Mumbai in search of a better livelihood. And after that, the Ambedkarite movement picked up and education and everything was, universalized. And it prompted many of my father's cousins to migrate to Mumbai as well. And each one of them, when they came to Mumbai, they stayed at our place. I mean, it was not a very big place, but they stayed at our place till they found a job and a place to stay there. So they regard him in high esteem. But of course, his aunt, who was from the previous generation, she didn't like all this. Like, she was totally embedded in old traditions and beliefs and all that.
What were your main challenges in school as a first generation learner? Because one of the things that really struck me while reading the book was that in class they're reading about the poetry of rain, I think. And Avinash, who lives in a slum, is mystified because he sees no poetry in rain. He thinks this water will come down this hill slope and this house will become a muddy mess.
Yes, yes, yes. Yeah, my first challenge was to learn the English language, to come to terms with its grammar and all that. And my second challenge was to come to terms with the syllabus, which was framed by the mainstream people. Like the poem you referred came from a very successful poet from the mainstream. And most of them, they believe in art for art's sake. They don't believe in art for life's sake. When I heard that poetry and tried to imagine, and I couldn't do that. But that was also a boon in disguise, in the sense that I tried to find my own alternatives while learning the language. Like I've mentioned one, that stationary and stationary, the difference between one letter, the difference of one letter changes the meaning. And that way I tried to form my own shortcuts, my own symbols, my own, pointers to learn. And then I started asking questions to the teachers. Earlier, I was very scared of asking because others used to laugh, my classmates used to laugh. But my father said, no, you have to ask questions if you don't understand. It is the duty of your teacher to, and they'll do. They like students who ask. So that was also my turning point. It was a boon in disguise. And then another thing was, I realized that I had to find my own answers. So I took to reading. When I took to reading, I used to go to all these raddiwalas and pick books, maybe with less pages, torn pages at meager amount, and try to read it, get a dictionary or something like that.
Was there a book that actually, that was not a textbook, but actually opened up your world and made a real difference to you that you remember?
No, I can't refer to one particular book because my father, who taught himself Marathi after shifting to Mumbai, he also was a reader. We had books in our house at that time also, but they were in Marathi. Like he had a biography of Abraham Lincoln and it was written by Acharya Atre. Then he had a book by Mahatma Phule. It was in Marathi. And of course, he had several books by Babasaheb Ambedkar. So at that time, I was not very familiar with reading Marathi because I was like, neither Marathi nor English. I was caught between two languages. I used to speak fluently, but reading Marathi. But at that time, he used to read me out. Why you should read Lincoln or Mahatma Phule or Babasaheb. Of course, he insisted that you have to read all his books to get a proper perspective.
But as a kid, we always want to fit in with classmates. And how did your classmates regard you? I mean, did it ever embarrass you that your parents were not educated, that your father, worked as a security person, where you lived, your mother was a domestic help?
Yeah, see, my classmates who came from an elite background, they of course didn't like it, but in a city like Mumbai, people don't just overtly try to, criticize you or condemn you. If you remember in the book, I have said that when I joined the drawing class and my drawing teacher said that you need not pay fees and all that. And my father came to meet him. The students in the class, they laughed and they giggled. But of course, there was no aggressive backlash or criticism like that, which happens in villages. And another thing which made me stand out was my interest in painting, in drawing. And because of my drawing teacher, I was a better painter than others, which gave me a feeling of, that you are also something. Like you also have something which others don't have. But of course, there were some students from business families and they said, hey, kuch karna hai, sab faltu cheez hai. We don't care about these things because ultimately we have to run our family business.
Would they invite you to their houses? I mean, in the book, Avinash goes to Atharva's house once.
There was one house, but he invited me only once. But nobody visited my house. That much I can tell you.
Would you have wanted them to?
Yeah, I wanted them, but they didn't. For obvious reasons.
In the book, a lot of people, when they always keep asking, Avinash, what's your last name? And then they say, oh, you're a Jai Bhim guy. And they refer to Ambedkar as the god of the slum dwellers. Was that quite commonplace even when you were going to school?
Yeah, of course. That was very common. But that was, like he's different. Like he's not up to our mark. There is that very subtle dividing line where their interests and my interests were different. Like those were the days when people used to collect photographs or stamps or even the chewing gums. We used to have those small photographs of cricketers. So they used to prepare albums and all. And their area of interest was different. Like those days, there was no television, only radio was there. Then there used to be this very popular program, Binaka Geet Mala, and it came once in a week on Wednesdays, 8 to 9, on Radio Ceylon. We didn't have a radio at home. So sometimes, some days, I used to go down to some other locality and stand outside the window to hear those songs. So that next day, when my classmates would discuss, I'll have some idea कि भाई क्या है ये, that kind of a thing.
And I think that's the most sort of telling thing while reading your book, where we are used to the horrific depictions of caste atrocity and violence that you read about, in a village or something. But what you keep showing over and over again in the book is how subtly the them versus us divide can be brought about in a way that can never make a headline. This is not a front page story but it constantly keeps happening.
It is there, but it is very covert. It's because I spent my life in Mumbai. So in Mumbai, the dividing line is so thin and subtle that it is different from what happens in villages. But it is still there, it's still there.
Though, of course, now I feel like we definitely hear a lot more about Dr. Ambedkar from all parties than when, we were growing up. At that time in the Congress years and stuff, you didn't mainstream discourse on Dr. Ambedkar, there wasn't much. You knew him as the person who, in the Constitution and Dr. Ambedkar. Beyond that, his ideas were not much discussed. But what do you think has changed? Do you think there is more absorption of his policies, or has he totally been just co-opted and made into a symbol?
Both things have happened. One is that in those days, Ambedkar was not accepted even by the Congress. Like apart from accommodating him in the Constituent Assembly, Congress has always opposed him. And wherever he tried to, fight an election, they ensured that he got defeated. They used other scheduled caste people to defeat him. 1885 was
the founding.
When Congress was found. In 1985, the centenary was celebrated in Mumbai. And in 1985, his photograph was used in that conference. That was the time probably the Congress realized that they can't do without him in the political arena because they also need votes of the Dalits. And from then onwards, he was gradually accepted. But the turning point came when VP Singh became the Prime Minister. So he gave him Bharat Ratna. He put up his portrait in the parliament. And he did so many other things. One more thing which helped out was that he accepted the Mandal Commission. When he accepted the Mandal Commission, a huge lot of people, they became beneficiaries of reservation system. That is the OBCs. These are the former Shudras. So after the Mandal Commission was enforced, lot of OBCs developed interests in Ambedkar. They started reading him. And that is how, gradually his acceptance in politics increased. And of course, the other thing which you said, co-opted, then the co-option started. After Congress did it in 1985, the co-option started, but it was just pick and choose. Like the communists would say, he did this for the workers, he did for the downtrodden and all that. But they would never say that he criticized communism or he rejected communism altogether because communism supported violence and dictatorship of the proletariat. Ambedkar was against dictatorship of any kind and violence. Or take the case of BJP. They'll always say that Congress harassed Ambedkar and Ambedkar was against Congress. They'll never say that Ambedkar also was a very strong critic of Hinduism, the social evils in Hinduism. They will never say that. So this pick and choose thing in politics is still going on and he's co-opted. Like today we have so many memorials and even some under construction and all that by all political parties. But on the other side, the scholarships of SC, the Dalit students, they have been stopped for the last 2-3 years. And so many other things like the funds budgeted for the social justice department, they are diverted to other departments without any reason, like just to appease some section of society because elections are there. Like, for example, the Ladki Bahin Yojana in Maharashtra, they have diverted huge funds from the social justice department for the Ladki Bahin because they wanted to get votes of women.
What did liberalization and the free market mean for his vision and his legacy here?
See, Ambedkar was not against capitalism as such, but he also wanted that the distribution of wealth should not create so much inequality. And to enforce equality, every person has to be given a level playing field. It is not that making an illiterate person the collector of a district. It is just giving him the opportunity. If he succeeds, okay, make him. Otherwise, he'll earn his livelihood according to his talent, his education, whatever he knows. That was his idea. But this liberalization, privatization, and globalization came as a terrible blow because the government, I'm not saying the BJP government alone, even the Congress government and all governments of all hues, they surrendered totally in favor of this privatization, liberalization, and globalization. And all labor laws were changed, and the upper hand was given to capitalists and multinational corporations. When Ambedkar was there, when he legislated the laws for laborers, white collar or blue collar, I remember when I passed out matriculation, I was told, boss, you do some typing class because a person who was a matriculate, could get a job very easily as a clerk if he knew typing. And that was a permanent job with all benefits like bonus, gratuity, PF and all that, increment and all that. Now the thing has changed so much because of this liberalization that even highly qualified people, they can't get proper jobs. There are no secure jobs. And whatever the employer says, like in newspaper industry, I won't tell you the name of the newspapers, but some newspapers, when they closed down, they intimated their reporters and editors on email that from tomorrow we are closing and you'll get only 1 month salary. Bas, baki kuch nahi milega. So this has, destructed the whole structure of employment security for the masses. Like Dr. Ambedkar's message was that Shika Sangatitva Sangarsha Kara. You educate yourself, you unite, and you agitate for your rights. But now if a person, even if he gets educated, he can't find a job. And even if he finds a job, he'll get 10,000 or 15,000 rupees salary. He is not sure that it will continue next month. There is no accountability for the private sector. The government sector has accountability. If something goes wrong, there is noise in the parliament or assembly or whichever local body is there in authority. Action is taken. But for private sector, I think it is a free game, like free for all.
But what has it meant for the Avinash Gaikwads of this generation, young Dalit people coming of age now? As you say, they're getting the education. That doesn't necessarily guarantee employment in the way Dr. Ambedkar envisioned, but they are also looking around them, and I would assume they too want the same fruits of liberalization their peers are enjoying, whether it's the smartphone or whatever trend is going on around there. They also want that. Do Dr. Ambedkar's ideas have much meaning or relevance for them? I mean, when in conversations, what do you find?
Now, you see, I think today what has happened is when a person gets education and he is looking out for a job, government jobs are shrinking. Now, very few government jobs and lakhs of people are chasing it. And the major chunk of jobs is generated by the private sector. Now, here again, the caste comes into the picture. Why I'm saying this? The private sector is largely controlled by elite castes in India. Even today, if you survey, you'll find that 70-80% of business houses are family businesses. And what has happened is, within these 75 years, Dalits who used to get reservations and jobs because of reservations, they used to get education and jobs very easily. They could not create a separate infrastructure in business or trade or industry because it is just 2-3 generations, after they started. So in absence of that, an educated Dalit has to go to the private sector for jobs. And in private sector, there are no safeguards. Everything depends on the mind of the employer. And if the employer comes from a particular community, he has his own Rotary Club. Rotary Club, I'm saying just as an example, not in the demeaning meaning case. What I'm saying is all these business communities are so closely connected internally. They don't allow. Now, I have examples of Dalits who are engineers, who are qualified in their fields and who want to do business, who want to get some contract, government contracts or do some business. Those areas have already been captured by elite communities who have inherited businesses. They don't allow any person from other communities to enter into their business, and they'll do it by any cost, hook or crook. So it becomes very difficult for an educated Dalits to join other private sector jobs, because there, of course, the competition is there, but there is no level playing field. So I think sooner or later, the question of reservation in private sector is going to come up, because now even the OBCs are getting educated in a large number. Women are getting educated in large numbers. So this is like a time bomb.
This is exactly the sort of issue Avinash faces in the book when he is choosing to give up his quote-unquote secure pension included government job at the port, and he wants to go into media. Now, at best of time, media can be a tricky job, but what his parents are concerned about also is that at least in the government sector, because of reservation, there is more of a mix of castes. The private sector is upper caste dominated. You had a career in media and, worked with different media houses. These caste issues, the fact that you were entering an upper caste sort of club, old boys club, how did you find that?
One thing I must tell you that my experience is like if I bumped into a Marathi person, he could easily make out my caste on my surname. Now, my surname happens to be in the OBCs also, but they'll definitely won't accept me. Then they'll say, who are you? Like, Sonawane matlab kya hai? Then I have to narrate. And I have never hidden my caste because my father was openly a foot soldier of Ambedkar. So I never felt ashamed of it. So if I bumped into a person from other states, and if I told him my name is Avinash Gaikwad or Sonawane, whatever, he doesn't know what Gaikwad is. So he's better placed in that way to deal with me. But among Maharashtrians, of course, they'll come to know. So, oh, you are Gaikwad. From which area? Like Nasik, Pune, Vidarbha. So they'll try to get, without asking straight away, what is your caste? They'll say, you're from Vidarbha or Marathwada. Or like that way. They'll try to find out your caste. But if a person is from other state, he wouldn't know and he wouldn't bother. This is the reason that when I approached a newspaper, the editor of which was elite class Brahmin, he said, this is a job not cut out for your people. You just go and do government job because this job requires lot of knowledge, reading and all that. So just forget it. But then when Midday required people, there was an ad and I went straight there and they required reporters very badly. And the editor was a Muslim, Khalid Ansari. So he didn't have problem with my caste. But he said, boss, you'll have to perform. And that, of course, goes without saying. He's also a businessman. And that was the biggest gamble of my life. Leaving a very secure government job and joining a private sector job where I was told that for 3 months you'll have to prove yourself, otherwise you'll have to leave.
Avinash's parents were not happy when he decided to do this. His mother throws a fit. What were your parents like?
See, my mother was an illiterate person. And obviously she was more concerned about the financial status, financial stability of my family because she herself was working as a maid. So when I joined the dock job, she said, now bas, abhi kuch nahi karna hai, you have to retire from here. Because the salary was good in those standards. And she even gave me a concession by, if you don't accept bribes, that is also okay for me. But don't leave this job. But my father was in a dilemma, like on the one side, he was also concerned about our financial liabilities. But at the same time, he was a staunch Ambedkarite. So he couldn't oppose me. So he tried to convince my mother and he said, no, let him do it. He was also, very jittery that if I am thrown out of the midday job, newspaper job, after 3 months, what will happen?
And when you embarked on a journalism media career, among the people who accepted you, did you find that because of your background, would you keep getting pushed into covering stories that were quote unquote about caste?
No, it depends. It depends. Like there are two incidents which are opposite. When something happened far away and it required visiting some village or, I was told ki bhai, you can do a better job, better justice to this. Okay.
Even though you grew up in Mumbai, you didn't even grow up in a village.
Because it's a Dalit issue, so you can do it in a better manner. And of course, this cuts both ways, because I also thought, yeah, I can do better justice for this. And in sharp contrast, there was one incident I should narrate that I won't take names. On 6th of December every year, Baba Saheb's death anniversary is observed in Mumbai. And lakhs of people, they come to Mumbai. And various political parties, they have their meetings and all. In one particular year, there was some very crucial issue happening and an important meeting was going on. And my immediate boss had migrated from Delhi and he knew nothing about Mumbai or the Dalit issues. So what he did was he commissioned my two colleagues from my newspaper. They were younger than me, newly recruited. And he told them, ki you go to that place, Chaitya Bhumi and all, you roam around and you find out ki how many of these people, these Dalits who come here in Bombay, how many of them stay back and increase the population of Mumbai and create burden on its civic services, and also how much littering they do, or talk to them and come with a story. Good. So I had no idea. He didn't tell me. And he instructed them not to tell this fellow, usko mat batao. I had no idea of this. And that day I was given some other work. So these two reporters went there and they talked to people and they came back and all that. And now at the end of the day, there was no story. Like the people they spoke to, they said, yeah, we have come from Vidarbha, we have come from Marathwada, but we are going. We have just prayed and we are going. We are not staying here. And in the vicinity, my colleagues found that the municipal corporation had provided services, cleaning services, so there were not much litter. Of course, some elite Shivaji Park residents, they had closed their houses and windows, but that happens every year. So the next thing my editor was worried about was, we have not sent anybody to cover that meeting. We are running short of time. The deadline is there. So they called me and they said, can you please find out your meeting mein kya hua? I said, why? You didn't send anybody? No, we didn't send anybody. So I called up a couple of guys and I got the information and we did that story. So these two opposite things are also there.
And what about colleagues, especially as you start rising through the ranks? And this is an issue Avinash also faces, where, your work is appreciated, your talent is appreciated, and all of that. But then suddenly when it becomes an issue of somebody working under you, who is reporting to you, again, the background raises its head. Did you have to face that too?
Yeah, it is true. This has happened. But then again, in a place like Mumbai, there is a very thin dividing line. If you are a Dalit and if you are also a very honest person, then it becomes a double jeopardy. Like people will say, nee, it's not because you're Dalit, it's because you're too honest. You don't drink, you don't go to these places, you don't mix up with these guys, and they don't mingle with you very comfortably. Aisa bolenge. But I feel that it is a subtle form of othering people, and that has happened with me. But I'm very glad that at that particular point of time, my seniors in Delhi, they stood behind me. And they told those guys, ki, boss, he's senior to you in the profession as well as in this newspaper. So nothing doing, he'll be promoted and you'll have to work under him. So they resigned and they went. So that is the incident on which I have ended the book on a positive note.
Yes, you ended the book on a positive note where this happens, but Avinash is still looking ahead. Did you feel positive about it when it happened to you? Because, I don't know, it seems like it would really hurt.
No, because over the years you get used to these things so much that it's like small mercies, What can you do? Like, you can't wish away caste or you can't wish away bad people. They are always going to be around you. And some of my friends told me privately that, those people resigned not because you are Dalit, but because, they had some vested interests, there some rackets they were running, so they would have suffered.
The other interesting thing in reading the book is that when we read stories around caste, Dalit issues, it often becomes about some of this conflict and interactions between upper caste and lower caste. But what I found very interesting about the way you approach this book is how through Avinash, you are able to explore issues within his own community. For example, about the fact that Avinash is and his family is Buddhist, and then there are Dalits who are non-Buddhist. Was that like a real sort of touchy issue sometimes?
There are touchy issues like that because people are so enslaved by traditions and what they have been following for generations together that they don't want to raise their voice or ask questions or step out of the boundaries. So even in the slum, when I used to run free classes for students, there was one incident which I have written in this book, that a Hindu parent, he was so jittery about sending his son. He said, first of all, you are holding these classes in a Buddha Vihar. And if somebody from our community sees it, then there will be a problem. I said, I am not converting him. And as such, in Buddhism, there is no God. And we don't pray there. It is the only free space available in our slum. And I'm just giving back to society what I have. And finally, I got to convince him. And after his son got good grades, he wanted to give me Guru Dakshina. He said, unless we give Guru Dakshina, my son won't be blessed by our gods. I said, if you want to give Guru Dakshina, the best thing is ask your son to teach some other person, some other needy student, help some needy student. That is my Guru Dakshina.
And even the issue around reservation, like Avinash wants to apply for a job, but he wants to apply in the general category, not the reserved. And that leads to this very interesting debate between his father, who's Ambedkarite, and his uncle, who says, like, you must take full advantage of this is the way we take our revenge for these generations of oppression. Tell us the dilemma you wanted to explore there through those characters.
I wanted to show the contrast between my father and my uncle, because my father was being an Ambedkarite and having suffered untouchability. My father was convinced that once he has he has quit Hinduism and he's become a Buddhist, he doesn't want to be called as a Hindu Mahar. So in my school living certificate, it is Buddhist. It is not Hindu Mahar. In my generation, those days, people used to write Hindu Mahar because to get reservation benefits, those were not applicable to Buddhists in those days. So people used to write Hindu Mahar to claim benefits as SCs in education and employment and politics. But my father was staunchly against it. He said, "No, nothing doing. Now we have left that thing and we should not do this. We should live as Buddhists and fight it out. Now that we have the constitutional safeguards, we have the constitution backing us, we should show that without reservation also, we can compete and show them." Now the revenge which my father wanted me to take was different from the revenge my uncle wanted me to take.
But you see, your father has this vision that, we can fight it out and we can show them that we can compete in the general category, which is what Avinash does. And in some ways, many of the people who are from upper caste and against reservations, they will also say that it should be a level playing field and all of that. But when Avinash gets through on an open category and clears an examination, then his employer isn't sure what to do. Instead of welcoming him, saying, "You've won in the open category," he says, "Oh, I don't know if we can hire you because now you're blocking a seat that is meant for the general category."
See, that is a very typical narrative or understanding of elite class people, that just keep everything to ourselves. Let other people serve us. That is why if you look at even the government services, you'll find the elite class occupying most of the posts. And when you scrutinize the reservation figures, reserved seats in government employment, you'll find that total number of seats are filled in class 4 categories, SC categories. But as you go higher in class 3, class 2, class 1, it goes on decreasing. And there are so many vacancies which are never filled. The backlog continues and it gets forgotten. So that reaction of that employer was that, why are you blocking our seat when you have the reserves?
But given that, what is your stand on reservation? Do we need to find new ways to talk about it? Because I feel like the conversations of it have become so binary. You have to just state, am I for reservation or am I against reservation?
I want people to think. I want people to think of alternatives. Like now, so many things have changed in the post-liberal era, and we need to find some answers. We need to find, because more and more people are getting educated. The number of unemployed people is increasing so much. And a government as an employer is just nominal 5%, less than 5%. So is there any need for having some safeguards in the private sector? You see, reservation started with SCs, the untouchables. Then it went to OBCs. After that, it went to specially economically backward classes, and then the EWS came and all that. Now we are at a situation that almost entire population has some or the other reservation. All communities have some or the other reservation. Like in EWS, it is only for elite class, because people who qualify for SC, ST, OBC, they are not supposed to apply for EWS, right? Then the ultimate question will be, shall we have 100% reservation according to the proportionate population of that particular community? Will people accept that? The elite class won't. Like if a community is just 3% of the population, and if it is holding all influential posts, say 60%, will it allow? It won't allow. Reservation should last as long as caste prejudices last. You can't wish away caste like that. You have to provide some kind of level playing field. So have private sector quota, or there was some proposal some years ago, very strongly demanded that there has to be some reservation in the private sector.
Yeah.
But of course, we have a powerful business lobby, and it was all shelved. It died a natural death. And instead of that, they came out with CSR, corporate social responsibility. Now, nobody is telling us where do these CSR funds go? Are they going to the needy people among the scheduled caste, scheduled tribes, OBCs? Or it is just going for NGOs floated by the elite communities? Nobody's talking about that.
Well, you said, okay, that we would need reservations long as caste prejudice lasts. And some people will interpret that as saying, oh, we'll need it for the foreseeable future, because the caste prejudice, which is centuries old, is not going to ever disappear in a couple of generations. At the same time, you will have a lot of people, the elite class, saying, well, I don't care what happened 200 years ago or even 50 years ago. I wasn't there around then, but I don't care about caste right now.
If you say that I don't care what happened 200 years ago, vagara, vagara. So what to do if people are lynching others or committing atrocities in the name of caste, which came thousands of years ago? It is there in Rig Veda, it is there in Manusmriti. So this particular point was discussed by Dr. Ambedkar in his book, Annihilation of Caste. It was meant to be a speech to be delivered at a function at Jatpat Todak Mandal in Lahore. But they said, you send us your written speech. When he sent it, they cancelled the program. They said, you can't say these things. They are very, very radical. Now, what Dr. Ambedkar had said was that you strike at the root of casteism. A Hindu person committing caste atrocity with impunity, he doesn't feel that he's doing a crime. He's committing a crime. Why? Because it has come to him from his ancestors, and it is there in the holy texts. So that was the reason Dr. Ambedkar wrote in Annihilation of Caste that you strike at the root, you disown all social evils in the holy texts. So to end caste, simply interdining and intermarriage won't help. That is what Dr. Ambedkar said. You have to end caste by amending your holy texts. Now, people will say, how can you amend holy texts? How can you amend beliefs of people? So I have one example that in 1992, the Vatican had apologized to Galileo. That we apologized that Galileo was persecuted. Today, with total freedom, or say equality granted to everyone, even women from all caste religions, they are getting educated. The religious leaders should say that from today, we won't follow these shlokas of Manusmriti that condemns women. Nobody is willing to do that. So just by saying that 200 years ago this happened, the constitution is not even 100 years old. You have amended it more than 100 times. What about that?
What are the kind of ideas that you wish leaders who are coming up from the Dalit community themselves would espouse, because there is Ambedkar and he's gone. These are the people carrying forth his legacy, and this happens all the time to Avinash in his job, because he meets many other people who come from backgrounds similar to him, but they are all indulging in small acts of corruption, perhaps making some money here and there, and basically they are saying, this is a way for them to get ahead. They don't necessarily see anything wrong in it. Avinash does, but they don't. So what is sort of the responsibility, do you think, of Dalit politicians now to move the conversation ahead?
See, if you ask me, corruption, however small, however big, is bad, equally bad. And this is one of the themes I have tried to explore in my book, that when the oppressed people, they get empowered, they behave like their oppressors. They behave like their mainstream people whom they used to, give galis and badmouth them. So this is one of the themes. And corruption is a very serious thing, and it should be totally seriously dealt with in a manner that it, like a murderer does. Consider him as a murderer. In fact, there should be capital punishment for corruption.
That's pretty radical. I don't know if
Every day, if you hang 10 people for corruption, people will go on the back foot. Now what has happened, the opposite is happening. And because of this liberalization and privatization and all that, it has got a legitimacy kind of. Like, usme kuch bura nahi hai, it's nothing wrong. And there is a feeling that everybody is corrupt, but don't get caught.
Is corruption the main reason you left the job with the port?
No. I would have stayed back. I left my job at the port because I found that the media, the impact of media was much wider, and it provided a wide canvas to reach out to people and try to bring justice to them. In my job in the port, I would have remained there only and retired. And maybe in my spare time, I would have done some social work. But media offered me that accessibility and platform to write stories. That is why I left.
And yet that can also be a double-edged sword, as Avinash discovers, right? Where this poor woman who was involved in a small-scale corruption in the port and was getting paid for it, as a result of him exposing that corruption, she loses her job, her income, and is devastated. I don't know if you've faced any similar situations in your career, but it becomes a very difficult thing to balance, that kind of principle versus the need poverty.
This happens very often, and it happens with people around you. It happens with strangers. And when I was in Nasik, there was a case when a tribal boy was found hanging to a tree of an ashram school, and the management of that school was all Marathas, and they declared that he committed suicide. And his parents came from a tribal village far away, and they took his body. And after a few months, one of the boys from that ashram school, who belonged to the same village of this boy's parents, he went there and he told them that the teachers of that school lynched him to death because he tried to approach a girl of a higher caste. So the parents of that boy came to Nasik. No newspaper was willing to write that story because that particular ashram school was run by very powerful politicians. We came to know, and somebody guided him to us. I was at Express at that time, and we wrote that story. And after that story, the dead body of that boy was exhumed, and a post-mortem was conducted, and the case was filed, and all that happened. People were suspended and all that. But the case dragged on, and it dragged on so much, and it was very cumbersome for the parents to come all the way from that tribal village and all that. And there was total pressure from local politicians and the ashram school people and all that. So ultimately, all the witnesses, they withdrew. Evidence was tampered. Nothing happened. Like the real culprits were never punished. And one stooge of that powerful politician, he came to me in my office one day and told me, you can do nothing. What did you do? And I was approached by that person, why you take this money and sit quiet. I said, no, it is my duty. I'll do it. So I was told by this stooge that you could have just kept the money and kept quiet. Na? What did you achieve? So I told him, boss, I have done my duty. If there is a system, the whole system, If something goes wrong, if people are corrupt, and if the justice is not done, it is not my lookout. Like, I am not responsible. I have done my duty. Like the custom officer who once told me that there has to be a link. A link has to be established of honest people to get results. If it is not there, then you won't get justice. That was a very emotional moment for me. Parents of that boy came to me and cried and said, we want to live. We don't want to die. And now that our son has died, what can we do? So these things happened. Many things have happened like this.
In some sense, as you read Avinash's story and his principles and his moral standing, that question that Scrooge asked you, well, what did you achieve? I mean, event justice, so you didn't get justice. After all, you didn't get money either. At least you would have had some money, but no justice. What do you think real change would look like for somebody like an Avinash Gaikwad? Because in the end, though you end on a positive note, you do leave him alone. I felt like, is this a very lonely struggle?
Yeah, it is a lonely struggle, but as you struggle, you come across some good people also who help you out.
The links in the chain that you were talking about.
The links in the chain, yeah. See, there are good people around across caste and religion. The thing is, they are like scattered dots. They need to join. And another thing is, while narrating this story of ethics and morals, I have tried to touch upon untouchability of a different kind, which is not based on caste. It is based on morality. People don't want moral people, ethical people around. Like the employers, the business people, all those people who control this system, they don't like honest or ethical people around. They'll try to push them on the sidelines, like the custom officer was sidelined. The army officer was sidelined for exposing that corruption racket. And so many people I met, they were very good, but they couldn't have that link to get justice. So this untouchability of morality is responsible not only for everything bad that happens here, not only for human beings, it is also leading to devastation, destruction of this planet, because ultimately it is leading to hatred. So there are two kinds of untouchabilities I have tried to tackle in this book. One is based on caste and the other is untouchability of morality, which is very, very harmful, not for human values, but also for all living beings and environment and the planet.
Well, we have to end, but I will end with one quibble I have about the book, Rakshit. And I'm going to say, Avinash in this book, against all odds, he finishes his education, he gets a good government job, he earns enough so his mother can quit her job. But how come his parents, like all good parents, are not after him to get settled? Why does Avinash not get a love life in this book?
He has no time left and nobody likes him. Nobody likes him. Like while I was in college, there were several girls, classmates. We used to talk and all. They said, you are a very good guy, but you are a phaticher or something, stronger than phaticher. Like you are a phaticher guy. You don't have anything. Like what is the use of your morals and all
Too much morals.
Too much more. You don't have a luxurious life. Who would like to associate with you? Like that is the kind of thing. But of course, he is lonely, but he loves solitude. He reads, he writes. And within him, he is guided by Ambedkar. He is guided by Buddhism, which believes not in God or superstitions, but on moral values, making the life of all living beings a better place in this lifetime. Baba Sahib used to tell his followers that you be aware of two things, two kinds of people. One is the Shedji, the other is the Bhadji. Bhadji because he is the priest and he is controlling your mental life. He has brought in untouchability. So always be on the alert for the Bhadji. The other category is the Shedji because he is controlling your material life. And now in this world, the Shedji has become more and more powerful in the form of multinationals, in the form of businesses, industry, everything. See how he is controlling everything. He is controlling the media, the culture, everything. So Sethji and Bhadji, these two categories are dictating terms.
Well, on that note of caution, we have advice from Ambedkar. Rakshit Sonawane, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Sandip. Thank you very much.
Rakshit Sonawane is a first-generation learner from a so-called untouchable family which converted to Buddhism. After graduating in English literature, he studied journalism and law and gave up a government job with the Bombay Port Trust to become a journalist with media like Midday, The Times of India, the Free Press Journal, and Indian Express. He's the author of the novel Scum of the Earth, a true story from the margins. You can find us on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram at Express Podcasts. The show was produced by Shashank Bhargava and edited and mixed by Suresh Pawar. Thanks for listening. This is Sandip Roy on Express Audio.